A Navy SEAL climbed out of a dark Vietnamese canal wearing an outfit that looked almost absurd. On top, a camouflage jacket. On his legs, a pair of blue Levi's. Under the denim, women's pantyhose. None of it had been designed as a complete combat uniform. The jeans came from civilian stores. The pantyhose were often mailed from home by girlfriends or wives. Yet, for some SEALs operating in Vietnam, this strange combination worked better than the clothing the military had issued them. It lasted longer. It trapped less water. It offered better protection from insects and leeches. And in the wet, tangled terrain of the Mekong Delta, those details could matter more than looking regulation. But the story is not as simple as SEALs wore jeans because jeans were tougher. Not every SEAL liked them. Not every platoon used them. And some veterans believed the jeans were partly practical and partly a badge of identity. To understand why an elite military unit went to war in Levi's and pantyhose, you first have to understand the battlefield that destroyed ordinary clothing. The first Navy SEALs reached South Vietnam in 1962 as advisors. By the middle of the decade, SEAL platoons were conducting direct action missions in places such as the Rung Sat Special Zone and the lower Mekong Delta. This was not open country warfare. The Rung Sat was a maze of mangrove swamps, narrow waterways, mud, roots, insects, and hidden trails. Farther south, canals cut through villages, rice fields, and dense vegetation. SEALs often moved by boat, transferred into small sampans, and continued on foot through shallow water or thick jungle. Many operations took place at night. Small teams moved quietly toward a specific target, a base camp, an arms cache, a local commander, or a prisoner they hoped to capture for intelligence. The environment attacked everything they carried. Clothing stayed wet. Mud clung to fabric. Branches and vines caught on loose material. Mosquitoes bit through thin cloth. Leeches climbed inside trouser legs. Large cargo pockets could fill with water when a man climbed out of a canal, adding weight and making movement more awkward. The issued jungle uniform had been created for tropical combat, but SEALs were not using it in a conventional way. Their missions repeatedly took them from boats to water, from water to mud, and from mud into dense vegetation. They needed clothing that could survive that cycle again and again, so they experimented. By late 1970 and early 1971, photographs show members of several SEAL platoons wearing Levi's jeans in the field, often with camouflage tops. The jeans were not issued by the Navy. They were privately purchased, obtained through military exchanges, or sent from home. Some veterans identified models such as the Levi's 501 and 505. The attraction was easy to understand. Denim was tough. It resisted tearing when dragged through brush, roots, and rough boat surfaces. SEAL veteran Kirby Horrell later said that Levi's lasted much longer than other clothing his platoon had used. The cut also mattered. Jeans were tighter around the lower legs than baggy jungle trousers. Some veterans remembered that the closer fit reduced fabric rubbing and noise, particularly when wet. With fewer loose sections, the trousers were also less likely to snag on vegetation. Then there were the pockets. Standard combat trousers had large cargo pockets. Those pockets were useful on dry ground, but after a man climbed out of a river or canal, they could hold water like small bags. Jeans had a simpler 5-pocket design and did not create the same problem. This did not mean SEALs were willing to give up carrying space. Some customized their jeans by sewing camouflage or ERDL pockets onto the denim. The result was not a civilian outfit and not an official uniform. It was a hybrid built for one platoon, one environment, and one set of missions. Even the fly became a subject of debate. Some men preferred buttons because they believed a button fly was quieter and less vulnerable to dirt. Others argued that a zipper closed the front more completely and made it harder for leeches to get inside. There was no single approved answer. That was the point. The strangest part of the uniform was hidden underneath. Kirby Horrell remembered that when SEALs wore black pajama-style clothing on operations, leeches could get beneath the loose fabric and attach themselves to the skin. Removing them later was painful, unpleasant, and sometimes bloody. The solution did not come from a military laboratory. The men asked girlfriends and women back home to send pantyhose. The thin nylon layer fit closely against the body. According to Horrell, leeches could not bite through it. Worn beneath trousers, it created a barrier without adding the weight of another heavy layer in tropical heat. The idea sounds comic only when separated from the environment. In the Delta, a patrol might spend hours moving through warm water, mud, and vegetation. A leech could enter through an open cuff and crawl upward before the man noticed it. Mosquitoes were constant. Skin irritation, small wounds, and infected bites could make every movement worse over the following days. Pantyhose did not solve every problem, but they addressed one of the most persistent ones with something cheap, light, and easy to replace. SEAL Jim Berta described another simple modification. Rubber bands were placed around the bottoms of the trouser legs to prevent leeches from crawling inside. Combined with close-fitting denim and the nylon layer underneath, the improvised system sealed off the lower body far better than loose, open trousers. It looked ridiculous in a barracks. In a swamp, it made perfect sense. It would be tempting to describe Levi's as the superior jungle uniform and end the story there. But the veterans themselves did not agree. Retired Captain Rick Woolard, who commanded 2 SEAL platoons in Vietnam, tried jeans and found them less comfortable and less functional than jungle camouflage. New denim was stiff, especially before it had been properly broken in. Wet jeans could also be heavy, and in tropical heat, thick fabric was not automatically comfortable. Woolard did not prevent his men from wearing them, but he suggested that jeans were partly about style. That matters because Vietnam was where the modern public image of the Navy SEAL began to form. Green and black face paint, non-regulation hair, bandanas, unusual weapons, coral boots, camouflage jackets, and blue jeans created a look that immediately separated SEALs from conventional forces. One veteran recalled that a man wearing coral boots, Levi's, and a Rolex could be recognized as a SEAL at a glance. The clothing became both equipment and identity. Different platoons passed lessons to the units replacing them. New arrivals were told what had worked, what had failed, and what they should bring on their next operation. But those lessons were never completely uniform. One team might prefer Levi's, another might stay with jungle trousers, one man wanted a zipper, another trusted buttons. The unofficial uniform changed because the missions changed. The most important part of this story is not that Navy SEALs once fought in women's pantyhose. It is what the clothing reveals about how special operations units adapt. The Navy supplied uniforms designed for tropical war, but it could not predict every canal, every mangrove root, every flooded pocket, or every leech waiting in the mud. The men in the field discovered those problems one patrol at a time. Their answer was not a new uniform produced by a major defense contractor. It was a pair of civilian jeans, a layer of pantyhose mailed from home, rubber bands around the ankles, and extra pockets sewn on by hand. Some of those choices were clearly practical. Others carried an element of style. Most were probably both. That is why photographs of Vietnam-era SEALs still look so unusual. They show a young unit creating its culture while fighting a war that demanded constant improvisation. The official uniform represented how the war was expected to be fought. The Levi's and pantyhose represented how it was actually fought. In Vietnam, survival did not always come from following the manual. Sometimes it came from wearing something the manual would never have imagined.